Welcome to Daily Book Dive. Today, I'm presenting Money, Master the Game, 7 Simple Steps to Financial Freedom. The author of this book, Tony Robbins, is a very famous motivational speaker and a world-class expert in potential development in the United States. What is a potential development expert? Simply put, it means someone who teaches success and motivates others to act. Why should we listen to a success guru talk about money? There are so many professional books we haven't had time to read yet. Why this one? First, because of Robbins' experience. This self-made billionaire made his fortune from teaching success and then got even richer through investing and financial management. He founded investment tools for ordinary American investors with friends from Wall Street and has written more than one bestseller about achieving financial freedom, translated into over a dozen languages. However, these reasons are not sufficient. In my view, the greatest value Robbins offers is his super network. He not only gives public speeches and runs training camps, but also offers private consulting services. His clients include high-profile figures such as former U.S. President Clinton, tennis superstar Serena Williams, film star Leonardo DiCaprio, and many well-known entrepreneurs and financial elites. So, the key point is, for this book, Robbins used his network to interview 50 top masters of investment and financial management, including Ray Dalio and Warren Buffett. Their discussions were not brief. They often talked for several hours. Robbins, being a skilled speaker, dug up many treasures from these top investors, including their own asset allocation plans and practical advice for ordinary investors. The book extensively details Robbins' conversations with them. One of the most surprising parts for me was about Ray Dalio. Dalio provided a personal investment strategy suitable for individual investors, which he had never mentioned even in his own book, Principles, but which Robbins managed to extract through persistent questioning. We'll focus more on this later. The book is quite thick, containing 500,000 words across over 800 pages, but it is well organized. The book is divided into 7 parts, teaching us how to create lifetime income in 7 steps and achieve financial freedom. To Robbins, financial freedom means your investments generate a stable and continuous cash flow throughout your life, allowing you to do what you love without working solely for money. You can work, but for pleasure, not for money. Working for money makes you a slave to money. Working for love makes money your slave. So, how do we achieve this? Let's talk about the 7 steps outlined in the book. Part 1. The first step is simple: save more money. This is easier said than done, especially since people in China tend to save more than Americans. Robbins suggests saving at least 10% of your monthly income for investment, which is quite achievable for Chinese but more challenging for many Americans, hence the specific reminder in the book. An interesting point to consider is how to save more money with less pain. The book mentions a method by Nobel laureate and behavioral economics founder Richard Thaler, which is to commit to saving more in the future. For example, start by automatically saving 10% of your salary each month. Then, promise that with every pay raise, you will save a higher percentage from the increased portion or raise your saving rate by 3% with each raise. This way, you won't feel that saving more is a loss. Well, once you've saved enough money, how do you invest it to grow? There are plenty of advertisements for investment and financial products, and Robbins warns us to be less deceived, which is the second step. The book talks about 9 investment marketing lies. Summarizing, the main points are: first, high returns do not have to mean high risks, which I've previously explained in another book called Low Risk, High Return. In Money, Master the Game, Robbins suggests earning smart money, which involves looking for opportunities where risk and return are not symmetrical. This is the focus of the rest of the book. Another point is that actively managed funds rarely help you make money. For example, A statistic shows that from 1984 to 1998, 96% of funds in the U.S. public fund market did not beat the market, i.e., the major stock indexes. The situation is similar in other periods. Furthermore, David Swinson, chief investment officer at Yale University, told Robbins that the reality is even worse than 96% because when you look at past fund performances, you can only see the results of the funds that still exist, not those that have been liquidated. Moreover, actively managed funds also charge high management fees, which are deducted from your returns. Thus, many investment gurus recommend investing in passive index funds, which have very low management fees. Don't try to beat the market, become the market. This way, you'll be on the winning side, growing with the market. Icons like Buffett, Swinson, and John Bogle, the founder of Vanguard Group, all explicitly told Robbins this. You might have heard this advice many times in other books I've analyzed. The book further reminds us that when we say buy indexes, we're not just talking about stock indexes. There are also commodity indexes, real estate indexes, short-term bond indexes, long-term bond indexes, gold indexes, etc. Each of these is an option for your investment. What proportion of each index should be in your investment basket? We'll get into more detail about asset allocation in steps 4 to 6. Let's look at step 3, called planning. Ordinarily, we check navigation routes before we go out, and we need to have a plan for our careers. Accumulating wealth is no different. First, you need to set a financial plan. This plan mainly includes two aspects: your financial goals and the path to achieving those goals. How do you set financial goals? The book introduces 5 levels, which I found very enlightening. We often talk about financial freedom as our financial goal, but many people feel this is too far from their reality and simply give up. The 5 levels mentioned in the book are progressive. You can choose according to your needs. The first level is called financial security, which means you can meet your basic monthly living needs, including mortgage payments, utilities, food, transportation, and insurance, even if you stop working. On top of this, you can also afford some discretionary expenses like clothing, entertainment, maintenance, and dining out. Then you've reached the third level, financial independence. What about the second level? It can be seen as a transition between the first and third levels. If you can meet your basic living needs and half of your discretionary expenses, then you're at the second level, financial vitality. After meeting living and discretionary expenses, the next expenses to consider are for your dreams. You probably have various dreams about life, from realistic ones like taking an international trip, buying a better car, or moving to a larger house, to more extravagant ones like owning a yacht, a private plane, a manor, setting up your own charitable foundation, etc. If you can achieve those realistic dreams, you've reached the fourth level, financial freedom. If you can also achieve the extravagant dreams, you've reached the highest level, absolute financial freedom. Let's take an example. Suppose John Smith pays a monthly mortgage of $6,000, miscellaneous living expenses of $3,000, and discretionary expenses of $2,000. To reach the third level goal, financial independence, he needs an annual income of $132,000. So, if John Smith wants to earn $132,000 annually without working, he needs to rely on investment returns. Suppose John invests his money in a low-fee stock market index fund. According to John Bogle, the father of the index fund, the average stock market return from 2020 to 2030 is around 6%. Let's use this number for a rough calculation. Dividing 132,000 by 6% equals 2.2 million. This means that after John Smith accumulates a personal wealth freedom fund of $2.2 million, He can expect to earn an annual return of $132,000, covering his living and discretionary expenses. Of course, this 6% figure is just a reference value we use for convenience. After we finish discussing asset allocation in steps 4 to 6, you can recalculate your return rate based on your own asset allocation plan. Also, we've only calculated the money John Smith needs to reach the financial independence level. If John Smith wants to move up a level and achieve his various dreams, he needs to include those costs in his annual expenses as well. The author discusses a case here. He was calculating financial goals for some of his students, and some of them told him their ultimate dreams were to own a private plane, an island, or their own sports team. This way, they could fly anywhere, anytime, have beautiful island vacations every year, and always have free box seats at games. So, their financial goals were incredibly high, even reaching hundreds of millions. But the author reminds them that if they want to live this lifestyle, they don't necessarily need to accumulate these things themselves. You can rent a private plane, pay for island vacations annually, or invest in a sports team. The experiences are the same. The author hopes we remember, your dreams should focus on the lifestyle you want, not the things you want to own, because you can't take these things with you in the end. Possession is not the goal. Money itself is not the goal. The experiences, freedom, and opportunities that money brings are what we should really pursue. Once this is clear, many people find that the actual cost of their dreams is much less than they initially thought, sometimes even less than a tenth of the original estimate. Okay, we've just calculated our financial goals together. Some of you might feel that accumulating enough to reach these goals is a distant dream. How can we speed up this process? The methods the book provides are not unusual. Increase income, reduce expenses, earn more, save more. Earning more involves 3 types of income: employment income, hobby income, side income, and investment income. This tells us that investing is something we need to do both before and after we accumulate enough to meet our financial goals. Before reaching our goals, it's a tool to accelerate the process. After reaching them, it's a means to generate income. Part 2. So, how do we invest? The next steps, 4, 5, and 6, are all about this, so we'll discuss them together. I've read quite a few books on wealth management, but this book stands out because it provides a very clear strategy to the point where you can directly copy homework. It combines teaching both the fish and how to fish very well. We know that investing is mainly about 2 things: allocation and timing. Asset allocation focuses on what to buy and how much. Timing focuses on when to buy. Usually, the loudest voices in the market are shouting "buy the dip," "enter the market," "add more," "sell off." These are all about timing. The principle of timing is based on your predictions about market trends. But this book tells us that the best timing is actually not to time at all. That is, set up your asset portfolio from the beginning, then keep holding according to this allocation, or continue with dollar cost averaging. This is first because predicting the market is very difficult and consumes a lot of energy, which amateur investors are unlikely to do well. Moreover, the importance of timing is far less than that of asset allocation. The book shows that although different gurus have different views on investing, all of them agree on one thing: asset allocation is the most important factor determining long-term investment performance. For example, we call Buffett the stock god, but Buffett doesn't think so himself. He repeatedly says, "My job is allocation." Also, Yale's chief investment officer Swenson told the author that he often emphasizes to Yale students that asset allocation can explain the vast majority of investment returns. If you also consider the commissions and fees you pay every time you buy and sell, this explanatory power is even higher. Furthermore, if professional investors still have certain abilities and experience with timing, amateur investors are completely disadvantaged in this respect. So, if amateur investors want to compete with professional investors in the same market, they can only rely on asset allocation. That's why amateur investors must pay more attention to asset allocation. But asset allocation is one of the most professional aspects of investing. It's very complex when professors teach it in school. Investment textbooks are full of complex formulas, and the models developed by professional investors are even more complex. It's hard for amateur investors to understand how to do asset allocation. Fortunately, the strategy outlined in this book is very clear. The book describes a strategy called 3 buckets. The first bucket is the safety bucket. This bucket is conservative, only making fixed income investments. The assets it holds mainly include cash, money market funds, bonds, and pensions. The principle is safe, the returns are stable, and the purpose of investment is not offense but defense. The second bucket is the growth bucket. This bucket seeks progress and can take some risks, investing in equity, real estate, commodity futures, foreign exchange, and artwork. The goal of investment is to pursue higher income growth. Note that all the asset classes we mentioned, the author recommends not investing in a specific stock, bond, or property, but to fully diversify risks by investing in indexes. This lets you spread your costs over the most numerous and diverse assets possible. For example, stock index funds, bond index funds, gold index funds, and real estate investment trust index funds. This one lets you diversify your investments into many different real estate investment trusts. Remember the principle we mentioned before, to seek opportunities where risk and return are asymmetrical to achieve low risk and high return. Diversification is an important method. You might have heard the Nobel laureate Harry Markowitz say, "Diversification is the only free lunch in the world." So, how should we allocate the ratios between the safety bucket and the growth bucket? This can vary from person to person. For example, if you're more conservative, you might choose 70% safety bucket and 30% growth bucket. If you're willing to take more risks, you might go half and half. You might ask, didn't we start with 3 buckets? But the first 2 buckets already add up to 100%. Yes, because the money in the third bucket is not fixed. This bucket is called the dream bucket. This is also where this book differs from many other investment books. Author Robbins says we should set aside a small portion of money we can afford to chase dreams. Starting now, not waiting until we have more money later. You can set aside a very small percentage of your income each month, like 3%, and put it in the dream bucket. Another good option is unexpected windfalls. For example, if you receive a bonus, put part of it in. If your stock fund suddenly rises a lot, put part of the gains in. This is also a good idea for investors who always hesitate to sell during bull markets and miss opportunities. The money in the dream bucket doesn't need to be saved indefinitely. You can spend it when you want. This provides emotional joy and excitement. This way, we can experience the benefits of our hard work and investment without waiting for a distant future. Okay, now we know that managing our wealth should be based on 3 buckets as the basic strategy. The first 2 buckets, the safety bucket and the growth bucket, help us accumulate investment returns with a tone of steady progress. This is essentially steps 4 and 5 in the book, making allocations and stabilizing income. But for many amateur investors, even after hearing all this, they might still not know how to do it specifically. So, this brings us to our 6th step, learning from the masters. This is also the most important part of the book. As we mentioned at the beginning, author Robbins helped us dig up some information from those investment gurus that the public usually can't access. For example, Ray Dalio talks about a stable investment portfolio. We know Dalio is the founder of Bridgewater Associates and the author of the best-selling book, Principles. He runs a private equity fund with significant investment performance and high investment thresholds. Only investors with assets of $5 billion can join, and you must buy at least $100 million of the fund at a time. But after persistent persuasion by Robbins, Dalio finally agreed to offer a mass-market version of his asset allocation strategy to ordinary investors, like a top martial arts master publishing his secret techniques. So this also became one of the biggest selling points when the book was released. Dalio's allocation strategy is this: allocate 30% of assets to stocks, 15% to medium-term government bonds, for example, those with a maturity of 7 to 10 years, and 40% to long-term government bonds, for example, those with a maturity of 20 to 25 years. Finally, allocate 7.5% to gold and 7.5% to commodities. His strategy is very clear and simple. First, in the stock basket, don't just invest in a few stocks. Further diversify your investments, preferably by buying stock index funds. Second, the portfolio must be rebalanced regularly. This means that when a certain asset performs very well, you must sell some of it to bring its proportion of the total assets back to the original allocation ratio. For example, if stocks have risen significantly this year and now make up 40% of your total assets, you need to adjust at the end of the year to bring the stock proportion back down to 30%. Such rebalancing should be done at least once a year. And it's not just applicable to the investment portfolio we just discussed. If you do your own asset allocation, you also need to do this rebalancing. The book says this is also a way to diversify risk in terms of time. Many investment gurus emphasize the importance of doing this. Although the process may be painful, it gives you a greater chance of success. If you're curious about the underlying principles behind Dalio's asset allocation strategy, there are mainly two. First, risk balance. The balance here is different from our usual understanding. Normally, if someone says balanced allocation, our first reaction might be half and half, or divided into equal parts. But Dalio believes that if we invest half our money in stocks and half in bonds, this is not a balanced portfolio. This is because the risk of stocks is 3 times higher than that of bonds. Here, risk refers to volatility. And a portfolio with half stocks and half bonds will have 95% of its return volatility coming from the stocks. That is, you're actually letting that half of stocks bear 95% of the entire portfolio's risk. So, to achieve a balanced asset allocation in terms of risk, to keep income stable, you should allocate a smaller proportion to riskier assets. In addition to this, Dalio has another concept called everything has its own good season. He believes that only 4 situations can drive asset price changes: inflation, deflation, an increase in economic growth rate, and a decrease in economic growth rate. These 4 situations constitute 4 different economic environments, also called the 4 investment seasons, and each season will have asset classes that perform well. I've posted 2 diagrams here, showing the situations in different seasons. However, you don't need to rush to look at these 2 diagrams. Even if you don't look at them, there's no loss. Because Dalio says, even if we understand them, it's very hard to predict what season will come next. So, what we should do is design an asset portfolio that can protect our wealth no matter what season it is. This is the starting point for the allocation strategy we just discussed, which Dalio also calls the all-weather investment portfolio, designed to protect our assets in every season, all weather. Author Robbins got this portfolio strategy from Dalio in 2014, then went back and calculated its practical performance. The results showed that in the 40 years from 1974 to 2013, this portfolio had profitable years more than 85% of the time, had 2 break-even years, and only 4 loss years, with the biggest loss being 3.93%. Averaged over 40 years, the annualized return after fees was 9.88%. Remember Buffett's ultimate investment rules? The first one, don't lose money. The second one, remember the first one. The fundamental consideration behind Dalio's designed investment portfolio is also exactly this. Besides Dalio and Buffett, Robbins also interviewed other giants like John Bogle, the founder of the world's largest index fund company Vanguard Group, Carl Icahn, the world's largest mergers and acquisitions investor, Charles Schwab, the founder of America's largest brokerage firm Charles Schwab Corporation, and Sir John Templeton, called the greatest investor of the 20th century, and many others. Even for elites in the investment circle, meeting so many masters might be impossible in a lifetime, let alone having in-depth communications. So, if you're interested, I highly recommend clicking on the ebook at the end of the audiobook transcript to read the sixth part of this book. Part 3. Okay, now we've finally come to the last step of these 7 steps to creating lifetime income. The first 6 steps are all about small wealth, not big wealth. But this last step is about the greatest secret of wealth. It's called enjoy fully, share freely. The purpose of this step is to remind us that for everyone, the greatest wealth is not money, but passion. Feeling the passion of life is the greatest wealth. You live not for money, but to live happier with money. Reading this part, you can fully feel that author Robbins, as a potential stimulation expert, his own inner passion is very high energy and very sincere. Money can't buy happiness, we all know that. But on the other hand, money can indeed make us happier. These two are not contradictory. The key lies in how you use your money. 2 professors from Harvard University, Dunn and Norton, once wrote a book called Happy Money. They scientifically proved that there are many ways to spend money that can enhance our happiness, the most important of which are these 3. First, invest in experiences. For example, travel, learn new skills, new knowledge, instead of accumulating more possessions. Second, buy time for yourself. Outsource the tasks you hate and fear the most, like major cleanups or toilet repairs, etc. Let money free you to pursue the things you love to do, things that give higher returns. Third, and this is the point author Robbins emphasizes the most, is investing in others. The book lists many scientific experiments that find giving money away can bring real satisfaction. This benefit not only extends subjectively to making you feel happier, but also objectively to making your body healthier. Churchill once said, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." This is what author Robbins considers the ultimate secret of wealth. Giving. Studies show that when people buy things for themselves, they can only be happy for a few minutes, at most a few hours. But if they buy things for others, even just a small gift, the happiness from giving lasts at least a whole day, often several days, and sometimes even several weeks. And this kind of giving is not limited to giving to family and friends. In fact, helping and giving to strangers can leverage our happiness even more. Authoritative psychological experiments have proven that voluntarily giving food or money to strangers can bring a level of happiness 10 times higher than giving to people we know. Robbins talks about how many wealthy people we know, like Carnegie, Rockefeller, Buffett, Bill Gates, etc., after accumulating great wealth, have devoted themselves to charitable work, largely because they realize the happiness that comes from giving is the greatest wealth we can possess. For example, steel magnate Carnegie is a typical example of earning money for himself in the first half of his life and spending money for others in the second half. He also wrote an article called The Gospel of Wealth, describing a complete transformation in his life and wealth views. This article was later expanded into a book, and Nobel laureate Schelling required all his students to read this book carefully. But you might say, they're so wealthy, of course they don't mind doing charity. I'm still struggling to make ends meet. How can I afford to give to others? Here, we can look at the author's own experience. When he was young, his family was very poor, and they often went hungry. One Thanksgiving when he was 11, he opened the door to find a basket of food, delivered by a kind stranger who didn't leave a name. He was deeply moved. Later, he began to emulate this kind stranger by providing meals to hungry families he didn't know. When he didn't have much money, he supported 2 families a year, then 4, then 8. Now, his foundation can donate 50 million meals a year. Additionally, all the profits from the several books he has written are donated to charitable organizations. In the book, he mentions that for us ordinary people, we don't need to make large donations. Even just joining some charitable programs or donating some spare change to help strangers reduce hunger and alleviate illness is good. I first read this book in its entirety earlier this year. After finishing this last step, I made 3 very small changes in my life. First, I joined the Australia's Social Welfare Foundation's free lunch plan, setting up a monthly automatic donation of 100 yuan. Second, I regularly reserve sports facilities to invite friends to exercise together. Third, I stock up on small snacks and candies, keeping them in my office drawer and bag, ready to share with others anytime. Although these are 3 very small actions, I've felt over the past 6 months that they have indeed enhanced my happiness. Whether it's from the thanks and smiles of people around me or the meal data and pictures of children sent from the charity projects, you'll find they all have the power to heal the soul. So, I've decided to try more such actions in the future. Of course, giving is not only about material aspects, it can also be giving your time, your emotions, your presence. Give more of these to your family, your loved ones, your friends. Such a warm and vivid sense of wealth is also worth creating more of in our lives. Okay, now let's summarize the steps this book proposes for creating lifetime income in 7 steps. Step 1. Save more. Step 2. Be less deceived. Step 3. Make plans. Then steps 4 to 6. Make allocations. Stabilize income. Learn from the masters, can be completed together. Step 7. About the greatest secret of wealth. Enjoy fully. Share freely. Finally, today, I want to read you a few sentences from the book that touched me deeply. The first sentence. Managing your finances should be done in a way that suits you and must bring peace to your soul. If you make money but your heart and life are in chaos, it's not worth it. The second sentence. The secret to acquiring enough wealth is simple. Find a way to do more for others than anyone else. Make yourself more valuable. Do more. Give more. Serve more. And you'll always have the opportunity to earn more. The third sentence. Life is not just an adventure journey. It's also a happy journey that we should take time to enjoy. You can find both adventure and joy in the people you love, in your child's sparkling eyes. You can hit the jackpot everywhere. The fourth sentence. The meaning of life is not in what you get, but in what you give. In the end, what you get will never bring you lasting happiness, but what kind of person you become, what you contribute, will bring you lasting happiness. Congratulations, you've finished another book.